I'm Rick, and I'm doing a bit of research at the moment into why companies might decide not to adopt accessibility. So I'm going to talk a little bit about not so much my findings so far, but some of the questions that I'm asking. And if you'd like to be involved in that research, if you've been in a room where a decision has been made on yes we should, no we shouldn't, maybe we should go part way, I'd really like to chat to you afterwards, or there's a very brief questionnaire you might be able to help me with. So I think everyone in the room knows that accessibility is the right thing to do. So I'm going to leave that aside for this talk and focus on the business value. I'm also going to reset my time because that's been running an hour and a half and that's already time to leave. I made a single point. Also my click's not working. I think we need to see more slides in this, right? Well, there we go. So some companies make the active decision not to be accessible. These are often large companies with means and data. You would have thought that they would want more profit or more market share. So why might this be? One of the things that we hear quite a lot, I think most of us in this room would have heard this at some point or another, is that it's not the priority right now. And this is kind of a difficult one because legitimately it might not be the priority for a business. If your business model is early adopters, it's not a quality product or market share, then that's great. I mean, if you want to build something shitty at first, then make it better later, reach more people, that's okay, that's a valid business decision. If you're a small business and you don't have the capability and also don't have the means to invest in new people or training, rubbish business to work at, but again, possibly accessibility isn't going to be prioritised. And if time to market really is the difference between your business tanking and staying alive, then you do whatever you can to get out the door, and that's going to mean not building for everyone in mind. But most of the time when you hear people talk about it not being a priority, these things aren't the case. So I'd ask, are those really valid for your organisation, or are they maybe misconceptions? So one thing, the next thing that we hear a lot is that designing and building for accessibility is hard. Again, totally legitimate. Learning anything new is hard. But I was thinking about an analogy for this, and as a bricklayer, laying a wall of bricks is easier than laying a wall with a window in it. But if someone turned up to build your house and said, you're not getting windows because that bit's hard, you're not going to let them build your house. So just because a part of your job is hard doesn't mean that there's an excuse not to learn how to do it, to put in the time. And most people that have been professionals for a while find that it doesn't take more time and it becomes more intuitive. There's a whole other talk about this section which I'm putting together for next month. But there's a few things that I will talk about just today, just briefly. One is that the reliance on frameworks and libraries means we're further distant if we're writing code from the actual code that's being used. So that means we need to make more of a conscious effort to think about it. So just like how do we think about the hard design part, we also have to think about the hard code part. Again, we still need to do this. Some things that make it a little bit easier to keep practicing, because the more we practice, the easier something becomes, the more it becomes second nature. If you see good designs or make good designs, then share them. Look at style guides and create your own, because the problems that you're facing have probably been solved somewhere else, and they're documented so that you don't have to keep solving them. And look at different frameworks and components, because they're not all created equal. Write blog posts about your problems, how you've overcome them, and share good blog posts that you find. And read organisations' accessibility guides and their accessibility statements, because I learn a lot from seeing why and how people have decided to solve problems. Like I say, there's a lot more to that, and next month I'll do something about that. I'm going to move on to something I'm thinking a little bit more about this month. And that's that people driving the decisions don't know any better. They might be unsure about the compelling arguments to be accessibility compliant. They might be unsure about the number of users that this will help the organisation reach. And if you don't know these things, if you're unsure, how can you possibly prioritise being accessibility compliant against your other business requirements? But this is quite a good position to be in, because if you're unsure about something, then you can be educated. And I think that's our job, right? Everyone in this room has a responsibility to be involved in the discussions and the arguments to put forward a case for doing the right thing. And in this case, that also happens to be good business sense. So we need to influence people. One of the ways we can do that is with data. Fortunately, we have a lot that shows that accessibility makes good business sense. Lawsuits. Nobody wants them. It's a legal requirement to be accessibility compliant in this country, in the US, and many other countries. And lawsuits are expensive and they give you bad press, so good argument to avoid them, I would have thought. I quite like this quote that I found from a US company that said, the attorneys are telling us, you can't fight this, there's nothing you can do, just write them a check. And after writing them a check, you then also are legally bound to become compliant in a set period of time. So you're going to do the work, it's going to cost you time and money and expenses and all of those things. And there's some big names that have been caught out by this. Kohl's, Target, Disney, Netflix. These are household names. Last year in the US, there were 2,285 website accessibility lawsuits in the USA. Right, so even if your company doesn't have a red logo, the odds are not in your favor. Another really good business case to make is your increased users. Another quote, with inclusive design, accessibility is an important part of the design phase that enables the over 1 billion people with disabilities to participate in modern society. And that's a quote from Microsoft CEO, Satya Nadella. Now that number of 1 billion, I don't know for sure, but there was a report in 2016, the Global Economics of Disability, that put the number at 1.3 billion people. So what does that look like in Australia? Well, we did a survey in 2015, a survey of disability, ageing and carers. The ABS did this survey. It showed 18.3% of the population are living with a disability or impairment that has lasted more than 6 months, which was 4.3 million people. That's the population of Queensland. Right? And if we look at the number of people over the age of retirement, that's 36%. These are people often with time in our society. They're often cashed up as well. These are great people that you want to be using your products, and that proportion of the population is growing. So we really need to be considering them. And of course, we're not just helping those with disabilities and impairments. We know that inclusive design is a better experience for everyone. I might be carrying some shopping. I might have forgotten my glasses. I might be in a noisy environment. All of these different things mean that maybe I'm a reluctant user of your app. Maybe it's not a great experience for me sometimes too. So we're enabling non-users to become users. We're turning reluctant users into happy users, which are promoters of your application, which are repeat users because they come back, they like it. All of this stuff is money. This makes good business sense, right? So let's talk about the economics. According to the 2016 annual report on the global economics of disability, those with a disability have a disposable income of 1.97 trillion US dollars. Sounds like a big number, but put that in perspective. That's 10% of the world's disposable income. If that was GDP of a nation, it would be the 10th wealthiest nation in the planet. That's 25% larger than the entire economy of Australia. But it's not just those people we're talking about. Those people influence their friends and family. If someone tells you that they had a shitty experience with a product, you listen whether you're going to have that same experience or not. So include those friends and family, it's another $6.7 trillion market, which together is 40% of the world's disposable income. Now how can you look at that and not want a piece of that pie? This makes really compelling business sense. So what if businesses don't care? Well, maybe they have their own data and they don't trust these numbers that are peer-reviewed and have been out there and reinforced again and again and again. So why might their data be different? Well, is it legitimate or was it poorly researched? Is it complete? And is it reproducible? It might have been that they had some anomalous data, and because confirmation bias is a thing, maybe they saw those 4 people that they researched, saw what they wanted to see and stopped researching them. So we can challenge data even if people say that their data is different to ours. Let's challenge it, let's look at it. And if looking at that data isn't working, well, there are still ways that we can influence change. And one is just persistence. Even if things don't look like they're working out, keep trying. Keep talking about that data. Look for new data, new research, new frameworks, new examples, new people that are demonstrating this is a good thing. Because the more you talk about it, the more likely you are to come up against someone in your team or the organisation that has that aha moment, and they get it. And you can compromise as well. You don't need to go in straight away if you think you're going to have a losing battle and lose some kudos with your company. You don't need to go in straight away and say, we're going to do this thing and we know it's hard and it's going to be expensive. Start small. Take an aspect of accessibility that you want to tackle. Maybe you're talking about layout or contrast or visual accessibility that you want to tackle first. And when you do it, look at what it does to your data. Look at what it does to the analytics, the user sentiment, the people that are using your application. Do people come back more often? How long does it take to develop or design with this in mind when you haven't done it before? And then 3 or 4 or 5 weeks later, is it still taking that amount of time? Because all of that data can be put together to help you make a more compelling argument to expand the scope of your accessibility compliance. And finally, you can use your network. Some people will never be influenced by you. That's just a fact. Some people need to be influenced by proxy. But that's good because there's a wide network of people out there that might be able to help. Start by looking within your organisation for someone that can influence. The reason I quoted Microsoft is because what they're doing at the moment is great. And their CEO, the fairly recent CEO, has a son with cerebral palsy. He's emotionally invested in making his products better for everyone. So he's driving this. And with those numbers, we saw 1 in 5 people essentially is going to have that disability, and more people are going to be exposed to them. There's a lot of people out there that will be emotionally invested, that will have the kudos to bring about this change and want to do it. They'll become your advocates. Find statements from companies that have done really well, or those that have failed. Companies like Coles that were awful, taken to court, became wonderful as far as I know, or certainly a lot better. Read about their journey, read about Microsoft's journey, or the UK bank Barclays that have gone out there with the goal not only to be the UK's most accessible bank, but the most accessible company on the UK stock market. That's their goal. Read their accessibility statement. It's really, really powerful stuff. Find local organisations that are doing a great job, and maybe they can be your advocates. Maybe they're even your competitors. That's a great way to bring about change. And finally, if all else fails, bring in the big guns. Adam and Utopia, I'm sure, will be quite happy to come in with the power of the consultancy. It's amazing how many people with the badge of consultant get listened to compared with the other 50 people in the organisation that have been saying. So that's my talk. You can find me, search for my name on the social medias, Rick Ginner. If you'd like to be involved in my research, come and chat. The questionnaire is at bit.ly/AliComp, A11y COMP. Thanks very much.